Get out of my house, dude. Don't come through the door. I will shoot. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy from GunGuyTV. Thank you very much for all of your support of my channel, podcast, and all that other stuff. I am super duper grateful. I have a great interview today with Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association and Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California. And we're going to start off with a couple of clips from the California legislature that you're just not going to believe them. But I'm going to play them for you here in just a second. Before I do want you to check us out on these other platforms because YouTube can be sketchy. And we've added a new one. We are uploading GunGuyTV videos directly to Twitter. So if you would like to check us out on Twitter, please do. There'll be a link in the description. You'll find our videos loaded there every time, and you can check them out right there in your Twitter feed. How cool is that? We want to support Elon Musk and what he's trying to do for free speech. So that's one way to do it. Check out GunGuyTV on Twitter. All right, we're going to go talk to Rick and Sam for the first segment of this rather long interview. I'll show you a clip here real quick because the truth is, even though California is super vocal about not liking guns and wanting to establish every kind of gun control known to man, I think what we don't realize sometimes is how they feel behind the scenes and some of the things these politicians think about the United States, the laws, the Constitution, well, and the Supreme Court. So I'll start you off with this brief clip of Sam Paredes testifying at the California legislature, and then I'll show you one senator's response.
Next, lead opposition, you have 2 minutes.
I will take my 2 minutes, Madam Chair. Sam Paredes, representing Gun Owners of California. Understand that microstamping does not exist in the marketplace right now because the inventor has abandoned the technology as it not being close ready for use. But law enforcement doesn't want this. The federal courts have declared that microstamping is unconstitutional, and in fact, this bill will mean that if guns do not have microstamping, that they will in essence be banned in the state of California. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, as well as Heller, McDonald, and Caetano said that anything that bans a gun that is in common use for lawful purposes makes it unconstitutional. And then the burden is on the government to prove that there is a historical analog for requiring microstamping back to 1791. And if it didn't exist, it's unconstitutional. Think what you might. That is the law. That is the law of the land. We will proceed and probably end up in court. And by the way, right now we're batting 1,000 in court. We're winning every case throughout the country.
Right after you testified on the microstamping bill, which of course is idiotic, your friend and mine, Senator Weiner, made the following statement.
I just want to make one comment. Before I was listening to some of the testimony on the TV. I think there was a comment about how because microstamping wasn't being done or required in 1791, that means that we can't require it today. That is a deeply radical and dangerous argument, not just around gun safety, but around so many things. We need to be clear. In 1791, the only people who were allowed to participate in any decision-making were white men who owned property. And to suggest that in 2023, we should be bound by policy that was created hundreds of years ago only by white men who own property, I think it's just absurd and is extremely dangerous for a variety of reasons. I know there have been some bad Supreme Court rulings, but what we've learned from this Supreme Court is that precedent doesn't matter. And so the Supreme Court has decided to completely upend and inject chaos into the entirety of law. And so all we can do is make the best policy decisions possible. And this is very, very good policy, and I support it.
So I guess, according to Mr. Weiner, we're not supposed to worry about what the Supreme Court says. And according to Mr. Weiner, we're not supposed to worry about any laws this country has ever had or anything the founders did because they were white. and they were rich, and he must have forgotten that the Supreme Court right now is not composed of rich, landowning white men. Is it?
Nope.
I mean, Justice Thomas came from poverty. He's one of the most admirable men I've ever had the privilege to read about in his life story. Anyway, I just had to share it because that's the kind of stuff you guys deal with in Sacramento. Is that behavior and that opinion actually in Sacramento, is that normal, or is he an outlier?
No, he's not an outlier. And the part that I'll start off this with is, I thought it was ironic as he says that after Sam and I, and Dan Reed, I think, was also there with us and from NRA, and it testified, was Weiner is white and a fairly, according to his website, wealthy male. So he's telling us not to listen to white, wealthy, landowning males, which means I don't have to listen to them. And I don't.
Well, I was wondering if it was a comedy skit. It looked like something from Saturday Night Live. It didn't. I mean, why wasn't he wearing a cone on his head? That's all I got to know.
Joel, I've been doing this for a little bit of time. Since 1980, I've been roaming the halls of the Capitol, and the left has always been hard and not very nice. They actually have rules of propriety and comity, not comedy, but comity, and a treatment of respect of the people that are testifying and each other. And they call each other, my good friend from Arcadia, California, or my good friend from San Francisco, or my good friend from El Dorado County. And it just drips with insincerity, because we know that if they had their chance, they would make sure that good friend would never serve a day in the legislature. It has gotten worse over the years. It has definitely gotten worse. The left has gotten bolder in their criticism, bolder in how nasty they are to people that testify and who believe differently than they do. And even with the Supreme Court, it's okay when the Supreme Court rules in their favor, but when it rules contrary to their perspectives, they try to discount it. And that's why they keep coming up with all of these pieces of legislation. We're tracking between 60 and 70 bills right now. And here in California, where they have controlled everything you can possibly control on guns, you thinking about buying a gun, you looking at magazines about buying guns, buying a gun, keeping a gun, transporting a gun, securing a gun, using a gun, cleaning a gun, selling a gun. They control everything. But that isn't enough, because it doesn't reach their ultimate goal of getting rid of guns. So they know that they can't outright ban all guns. So instead, they've chosen to use the old tactic of death by 1,000 cuts with all of these pieces of legislation to either try to bankrupt us in the courts as we sue them successfully to overturn their unconstitutional laws, or to just make it so difficult for law-abiding citizens, especially the new citizens that are the new gun owners, from buying guns, that they want to see the reduction of guns by attrition. So these folks are really nasty. Weiner and his cohorts in the Senate and in the Assembly. I'm telling you, I have never received such rude treatment from chair people on the Senate Public Safety Committees, the Judiciary Committees, Rev and Tax Committees than I have now. Even when they say, we're going to give your side 5 minutes, and I'm sitting there with my watch, and I watch insurance people go up and say why requiring people to have insurance before they can own guns is not possible. And then a representative for the police goes up there and says, oh, yeah, we oppose this bill, but if you cut us out, we'll be okay with the bill. And I'm sitting there and I've got 15 seconds left, and I go and she cut me off. Didn't want to hear. Just name and position, and then go sit down. And they tell you you've got 2 minutes or 3 minutes from the time your butt gets off the chair. They start the clock. Of course, when the author of the bill comes up with their witnesses, they basically have an unlimited amount of time to make their case. They are not interested in hearing from us. This is not a process that is designed to get the truth together and have a real public debate. That's not what this is about. I really think that a lot of the members like Weiner, Wahab, the chairwoman of the Senate Public Safety Committee, and even our affable friend Reggie Jones Sawyers, that they endure the legislative process in order to get what they want done. Bottom line, they don't care. They don't care about us. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the Supreme Court, the rule of law. They don't care about the facts. When we sit there and say, wait a minute, your reports, the reports generated by the state of California or the CDC say this about guns, and we're refusing to use the term gun violence because a gun doesn't commit an act of violence. Criminal act of violence with a gun. A criminal uses a gun. And they refuse to accept that fact. As a matter of fact, they finish with our bill, and then they take up other bills to make sure that people who commit crimes don't have to spend time in prison, aren't punished, and because it's not their fault. It is society's fault. It is actually our fault. Us rich, white, California. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not one of those. I happen to be of Mexican descent, and I am nowhere near rich. But it is our fault that people are committing crimes, committing murder, committing rape, committing theft and robbery. And somehow they're going to rehabilitate these people outside of the prison system. And what happens? You and I know. They commit another crime. So that's the atmosphere in the state legislature right now. But we have to do what we do to get the truth on record, whether they like it or not. And even if we're treated rudely, we're going to shove it down their throat. And we're becoming bolder and more specific about how we're going to shove it down their throat. And they hate it. And that makes me smile.
That makes me smile as well. But it does bring up an interesting question. Because what you've described just now is a process in the Capitol where it sounds as if it is impossible to have any victories at all. But that's not true, is it, Rick?
No, I mean, as Tam said, I would say over the last year, have looked at the playbook. We've got a lot of experience on different sides of working this problem. And, one of the things that we just pulled off, and I didn't think it'd be as successful. I was just hoping to get like a toe through the door. I feel like I got at least half a foot. And that was our own Capitol Day, where we brought up people, part of it as an optics, to get some of the Republicans and some of the moderate Democrats to start to realize that, yeah, this isn't just rhetoric when we say, hey, Bruin has reset the playing field. This isn't, what the leftists point out is, everybody's a bunch of Elmer Fuds walking around who are pro 2A. And so we brought women, people of color, we brought youth. They went and sat inside offices with senators and assembly members for a day and talked about 3 basic things. One of them was all the issues surrounding the doxing of CCW holders, last year about this time. Also looking at, what the people like Reggie Jones, Sawyer, Weiner, and Blake Springer, et cetera, are trying to do against the Bruin decision with Senate Bill 2, trying to create all these safe spaces. And so all these people were able to come out. One of our ladies was able to talk about being an Asian woman and a single mom and how she had to move because of the doxing, how it put a target on her back, since there's a lot of people that have increased their hate towards Asian people here in California, and how this wasn't fair. We had the state trap championship, a 17-year-old who was eloquent. She spoke 12 times in one day to different offices and talked about how Assembly Bill 2571 a year ago, which took away a lot of the methods that Sam and I and others have used for decades to be able to raise funds and to meet youth where they're at. And she was able to cite, and one of her fun facts that she gave was, one of the assembly members was like, well, isn't it kind of dangerous what you do? And she turned around, she said, ma'am, she goes, and just our little subcategory of competitive shooting, we've had 2 million trigger pulls and not one accident. And coming out of a 17-year-old female with a mixed background, that was incredible, because, that fun fact does not mount up with the narrative of the left. It completely destroys it. But then when she talked about how she was trying to go to college and she can't go to college because college recruiters can't come into California under Title IX, they have to advertise to more than one person. And each of those is a $25,000 fine, thanks to 2571, that didn't correct it. It was one of the things Sam and I and others that were working with us to try to defeat that bill late last year kept telling people, this is literally to destroy kids trying to be going to college, just one subcategory. And that met with a lot of moderate Democrats who are like, we need to change that. That's not right. So, there are victories that were happening, but we're happening, like Sam said, the 1,000 cuts. I look at those, each of those cuts, we've got to stitch up, stop the bleeding, and start the healing and moving back and taking it and start cutting them 1,000 times. And so that's what we're in the process of doing.
As I mentioned at the outset, this is the first segment of a rather long interview. We'll get into the next parts in the next day or two when I'll post the second segment. We went into detail as to exactly what the state is doing, the bills they're trying to pass, and what the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the Gun Owners of California, and even Dan Reed from the National Rifle Association are doing to fight back and keep these things from becoming law. Look for that in the next segment. Thank you again for all of your help and all of your support of GunGuy TV. I'm super grateful. Wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.